Okay. We pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we give thanks to you through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that you have refreshed us with the gift of life. You have forgiven our sins by your death and resurrection at the cross, and assured us that when death comes into our preview, when we experience what you have already gone through and come out the other side in resurrection, that it will not be our death, that we will also rise with you into eternal life. And yet we live in a culture of death. We live in a culture that continues to push forward all manners of death, especially death in the womb. And we ask, Lord, that you would open our hearts and minds and equip our voices using presentations like tonight and Dr. Harrison to teach us about ways that we can combat this culture of death and to give us the confidence to go forth in joy, knowing that we can share a gospel-motivated voice for life with all whom we meet, and that we can offer something instead of death, that we can offer life and help, and that we can be supportive of those who are going through crisis pregnancies. We can provide aid and support, and that all of this will be provided by your gracious and loving hands. Now be with us this night as we learn, and be with our speaker, Dr. Harrison, as she instructs us in the wisdom of life over death. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, I want to introduce Dr. Donna Harrison. As I told you before, she is a member recently installed to our Lutherans for Life Board of Directors. The first time I heard Dr. Harrison was also at a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Life Conference in Washington, D.C., and she addressed the crowd on the topic of the incidence of breast cancer in birth control. And she brought up the idea and some of the history and the research that nuns who had never taken birth control were experiencing a higher risk of birth cancer, I believe it is. Well, you can tell me about that. I can't remember the connection, but I do know that she is very learned and is going to teach us tonight about the medical abortion side of the abortion industry. And she's going to open our eyes to all that is out there. Dr. Harrison is also the executive director of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So, Dr. Harrison, please take it away and give us your presentation. We look forward to your wisdom.
Thanks very much, Pastor Duncan. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can, yes.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because the slides are a lot more attractive than looking at me talking. So I'm going to talk tonight about over-the-counter abortion because that is really where the abortion industry is pushing. And it provides some unique challenges to our work as Lutherans for Life. It also provides some unique opportunities. And I want to talk about both of those. So I'm going to give you a background of what is coming down the pike. I want you to understand at the end of the talk, the current availability of abortion drugs, the medical organizations who are pushing the use of these drugs throughout 9 months of pregnancy, unfortunately, as well as the horrific risks to women who self-abort. The second part of the talk will allow you to comprehend the potential for abuse of abortion drugs by pimps, family, angry boyfriends, etc., and understand the laws surrounding forced abortion. And then at the end, we're going to take a really short time to kind of brainstorm specific challenges and opportunities that arise with self-managed or do-it-yourself abortions. And maybe, if we have time, develop a set of collective responses and recommendations. So I'm looking forward to the Q&A session as well. So let's first talk about the availability, the organizations, and the risks. So abortion drugs are currently available, very available. And here is one example of abortion drug availability online. It's an organization called Aid Access. It's run by a supposed physician from Europe, from the UK, actually from somewhere in Europe. It may be Denmark or Sweden. I'm not sure where she's from. Anyway, she ships drugs. She ships abortion drugs into the US and allows patients to buy abortion drugs online and then give them to themselves without ever seeing a physician. But that is not the only website available. Here's some of the, I think it's the last count's about 76 different websites that offer abortion drugs, and that isn't even dark web availability. So essentially right now we have the availability of abortion drugs where women can just go online without any kind of medical supervision and get these drugs. Well, the FDA has done remarkably little to stop this. They did send a warning letter to Rablon. Rablon is associated with aid access. And basically they said cease and desist or we'll start seizing your shipments that come in. However, you have to understand that even if the FDA tried to seize shipments, they only have the ability to seize about 10% of whatever gets shipped in. Because of course, Rablon's not going to tell them when and where they're shipping. So random seizures will only catch about 10% and the other 90% will get through. Aid Access is very proud to have given the cold shoulder to the FDA. They basically said, we will not cease and desist and you can't make us. And this is how they advertise themselves. For many women, girls, and trans men, it can be impossible to secure a safe abortion. Now, and I'm going to unpack the term safe abortion for you later. Aid Access supports women who cannot otherwise access an abortion and protects their human rights. So they are boldly going to flaunt any laws that would try to inhibit their ability to sell drugs. They also give a lot of very untrue information on their website. One of them is the term safe abortion. Now, an abortion is not safe for the unborn child. Abortion is not safe for the woman who can hemorrhage, get infected, have retained tissue. So the only person that a safe abortion is safe for is the abortionist. So here they're trying to say misoprostol alone, this is one of the 2 drugs used in the chemical abortion process, causes an abortion in 94% of cases. But what they don't tell you is that many, many women have to have surgery afterwards. So 13% have to have surgery afterward in order to complete the abortion. This is a study that was looking at the 2-drug regimen, mifepristone and misoprostol. Those are the 2 drugs. Mifeprex and Cytotec is the other common words for them, versus just using Cytotec or misoprostol alone. And what they found is that using misoprostol alone, even though it's been advocated in places where you can't get the 2-drug regimen, their study showed that misoprostol alone was not left a lot of women with incomplete abortions. And in fact, the study was stopped because so many women were having complications that they didn't even complete the study. So when websites say, oh, this is a safe abortion, no complications, they're just basically flat out lying. When we look at availability, we see that abortion drugs are easily available online. Well, what organizations are pushing do-it-yourself abortions right now? We're going to look at those organizations, and unfortunately, they involve some very powerful medical organizations like the World Health Organization, like Doctors Without Borders, a previously very respectable organization working for good things overseas, but now pro-abortion. Planned Parenthood and Danco is a usual suspect, and of course the ACLU is the legal body behind Planned Parenthood and Danco and reproductive rights. And unfortunately now, and since the 1970s, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has been also pushing abortion, and now they're pushing do-it-yourself abortion. So here's the World Health Organization. In 2019, the World Health Organization listed both Ella, which is ulipristal, it's the alternative emergency contraceptive, and Mifeprex, plus misoprostol, as essential drugs. What that means is the World Health Organization listed essential drugs are those drugs that every country in the world should have for basic health care. But the only indication they give for both Mifeprex and misoprostol combination is terminating a pregnancy. It's abortion. Ella is supposed to be used as an emergency contraceptive, but you have to understand that Ella, ulipristal, is a second generation Mifeprex. That means Mifeprex and Ella, ulipristal, both of those drugs act milligram for milligram the same. You can cause an abortion with ulipristal after a diagnosis of pregnancy and all throughout pregnancy. So essentially, the World Health Organization has required all countries to have ulipristal and Mifeprex for abortion as part of their essential medicines. It's obscene. Doctors Without Borders, like I said, Doctors Without Borders is a previously very respectable organization who did a lot of work in areas of the country that were areas of the world that were torn by war or had very little medical infrastructure. However, they've recently teamed up with another group, howtouseabortionpill.org, to create this video which tells everybody how to do do-it-yourself abortions, what they call self-managed abortion. And this video is available online. I'm not going to go through it, but I'm gonna show you or talk with you about just the cavalier attitude. So in the same amount of time it takes you to boil an egg or answer an email, a new online video will show you how to end a pregnancy with pills. At the very beginning, it tells viewers how safe and effective this abortion method is and how low the rate of complications. Just like Rablon and any other website, they'll talk about safety and effectiveness. And I want you to keep that in the back of your brain because, again, I'm going to unpack that for you a little bit later. It's no surprise that Planned Parenthood and Danco, coupled with the ACLU, are pushing do-it-yourself abortions. But you might ask, why would Planned Parenthood, who profits from surgical abortion, push do-it-yourself abortions? Well, Planned Parenthood, through their arm, the Population Council, owns the patent rights to Mifeprex in the United States. They ceded these rights to Danco. This was a company that was just made up, whose holdings are in the Cayman Islands, so they can't be sued for malpractice. And Danco, of course, isn't anything but a shell company, and they have the Mifeprex manufactured in China and shipped into the United States. Planned Parenthood has made access to abortion the central theme of their organization, but remember, for Planned Parenthood, access is money. But Planned Parenthood has a problem with increasing access. Most OB-GYNs don't perform abortions, and most abortion providers are elderly and phasing out of their practice. There were two studies, one done in 2011 and one done recently in 2019, that showed 3/4 of doctors, OB-GYNs, do not perform abortions. So Planned Parenthood Population Council has backpedaled and said, you know what, we seem to have trouble forcing doctors to kill their patients. So maybe we ought to demedicalize the procedure altogether because we still get paid for the pill. So they plan to solve this problem by making every woman her own abortionist, so-called do-it-yourself abortions. It's a coat hanger in pill form. Then they can directly market the abortion pills to women and avoid those pesky doctors and other medical professionals who adhere to the Hippocratic Oath. But this requires pharmacy or over-the-counter access. Sorry. In order to allow prescription or over-the-counter access, The abortion industry has to prove that the pill is safe under unsupervised use. That's a problem. Because in approving Mifeprex, the abortion pill, the FDA approved based on a very special part of the FDA law called Subpart H. Subpart H is a part of the law which was designed to allow chemotherapy agents and other drugs that treat really serious diseases to get them on the market quicker. Okay, it's a fast track approval. But Subpart H of that fast track approval is the part which makes the FDA tell the manufacturer that they can only use the drug under certain circumstances. So Subpart H is reserved for those drugs which the FDA considers to be too dangerous to just give a carte blanche approval to. Those restrictions, those post-marketing restrictions, were formalized as something called a REMS with Itatsu. Now, what in the world is a REMS with Itatsu? A REMS is a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, and Itatsu is elements to assure safe use. The current REMS with Itatsu for Mifeprex requires very simple things: that the prescribers be trained, what a shock, and certified, and follow guidelines in the patient agreement form, and that the patients actually be given a copy of the patient agreement form and sign it and be counseled in risks. Those are not onerous requirements, and any other doctor would have no problem following such simple guidelines, but not the abortionists. The REMS is critically important to minimizing the risks to women from Mifeprex, because the risks to women are directly linked to how far along the pregnancy is, which drugs are used, and the medical support setting in which the medical abortion takes place. So if you have a woman who's hemorrhaging after an abortion, and she's in a situation where she is 6 hours from an emergency room, she is going to die because she won't make it in 6 hours. So you've got to have medical support for complications in order to minimize the risks from this dangerous drug. And the abortionists are fighting tooth and nail to remove those. Why? Because the REMS with Itatsu is the only thing that prevents the over-the-counter and prescription dispensing of Mifeprex. So Planned Parenthood's mantra, which must not be challenged. You guys have all heard of the name which must not be named, you know, the Harry Potter. The mantra which must not be challenged is safe and effective. Why? Because safe and effective is what the FDA has to have in order to approve a drug and in order to allow its over-the-counter use. So they will make sure every paper that's published by Planned Parenthood's researchers says in its abstract, Mifeprex is safe and effective, even though it's not safe, and the effectiveness depends completely on how far along in the pregnancy it's used. The abortion industry's spin is that there's no risks. It's 100% effective. So safe that no one needs to be trained. Any woman can use it on her own, even when she can't get to health care. So the ACLU, about a year ago, sued the FDA to force them to remove the REMS. The court case is Chelius versus Azar, and it's currently pending. And the ACLU is very proud to be suing the FDA to remove this last thing that would prevent over-the-counter sale of the abortion drugs. And now, sadly, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. In March, end of March, there was a large controversy about abortion during the COVID-19 pandemic. You guys are probably well aware of this. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists issued a statement, and my organization issued a counter statement. And I'm just going to go back and forth and show you what's being said by two medical professional bodies. one of which is rabidly pro-abortion and one of which is pro-life. ACOG says the consequences of being unable to obtain an abortion profoundly impact a person's life, health, and well-being. What they don't say is it profoundly impacts the baby's life, health, and well-being as well. APLOG replied, elective abortion is elective. That means by definition, there is no medical reason to perform the abortion. Elective abortion treats no disease. ACOG says, facilities that are categorizing procedures that can be delayed. Facilities are categorizing procedures that can be delayed, and abortion should not be categorized as a procedure that should be delayed. APLOG says, abortion is neither essential nor urgent, but it does consume critical resources such as masks, gloves, and other personal protective equipment, and unnecessarily exposes patients and physicians to pathogens such as COVID-19. ACOG says abortion is an essential component of comprehensive health care. APLOG says that is baloney. Over 85% of practicing OB-GYNs do not perform elective abortions. If elective abortion were an essential component of women's health care, it would be a part of every obstetric and gynecological practice. So you can see that we are in the midst of a huge battle right now. ACOG is cooperating hand in glove with Planned Parenthood, ACLU, World Health Organization, to push do-it-yourself abortion with no medical supervision. It's even if there were not the life of the unborn child at stake in this, it is a horrible thing to do to women. And we're going to talk about some of the risks to women. Infection, hemorrhage, tissue left inside, and long-term abortion complications. Let's talk about infection. Both mifepristone, that's Mifeprex, and that mifepristone is the first drug, misoprostol, Cytotec, is the second drug, interfere with the ability of the immune system to fight off infections. Both of them suppress the immune system. How do we know this? Well, it turns out that there were, right after the approval of Mifeprex in 2000, there were 4 women who died. There was one woman, very high profile case in California, Holly Patterson, beautiful 18-year-old girl, had a Mifeprex abortion, was dead in 2 weeks. Why did that happen? Because her body couldn't fight off a simple soil bacteria called Clostridium sordellii. Her dad, who is not a scientist, he's a contractor, said, what in the heck is going on here? He looked up other information and found out that there was another woman in Canada who had died during the abortion pill trials, clinical trials there. Wrote to the researcher, found out that it was Clostridium sordellii. He wrote to the FDA and he wrote to the CDC and said, did my daughter die of Clostridium sordellii? And they checked and yes, she did. And it turns out there were 3 other women in California who had also died of Clostridium sordellii. Very, very rare death, very rare. So the FDA and the CDC had a meeting, scientists from all over the country. I was able to go as a participant, not as a speaker, of course, but as a participant and listen in. And it's very, very clear. Both Mifeprex and misoprostol cause immune suppression that causes these women to be unable to fight off soil bacteria, Clostridium bacteria. So Planned Parenthood, knowing this, changed the route of administration of the second drug, misoprostol, from using the misoprostol in the vagina to allowing the misoprostol to dissolve in the cheek. That's called buccal administration. However, the women still continued to die of Clostridium sordellii. Now, that's infection, and that's why the infection happens. I want to bear with me for a minute while I go through the reason why women hemorrhage. And there is a lot of blood from Mifeprex abortions. So bear with me. This is this part right here. Can you see my arrow? Pastor Duncan, can you see the arrow on the screen?
Yes, it's showing up.
Super. Okay. So this part is a woman's menstrual cycle when she doesn't get pregnant. And this part is a woman's menstrual cycle when she does get pregnant. So in a woman's menstrual cycle, there is a signal from the brain that causes the ovary, this corpus luteum, to produce progesterone, this drug here, okay? And if there's no fertilization, that signal from the brain decreases and the progesterone decreases and the lining sloughs and bleeds. But why you don't bleed and bleed and bleed is because these spiral arteries squish down and they contract and they stop the bleeding, okay? So that corpus luteum is where progesterone is produced. In a cycle where a woman becomes pregnant, same signal from the brain, producing progesterone, but the corpus luteum from the ovary produces progesterone. But where fertilization happens in the tube and then the baby implants in the uterus, where the baby implants starts to produce another hormone called HCG, which is the hormone that you detect in the urine. When you get a positive pregnancy test, you're finding HCG in your urine. That HCG causes much more progesterone to be made, and the progesterone level goes up, and the lining stabilizes, and you can see where these spiral arteries are dilating because they're giving more and more blood here to make the placenta. That's what progesterone does. It stabilizes the lining. Okay, so you get a lot of progesterone made. Mifeprex directly blocks the action of progesterone here at the corpus luteum, so progesterone isn't produced. And it also blocks the ability of the mother's spiral arteries and the mother's part of the placenta to grow. So when that happens and the baby starves but isn't expelled, then you have to use a second drug to cause the baby to be expelled, because the baby will just die and sit there most of the time. About 5% of the time the baby will be expelled, but about 95% of the time you need a second drug to cause the baby to be pushed out, okay? The problem is when you use misoprostol and push the baby out, the spiral artery contraction doesn't happen because mifepristone directly interferes with the spiral artery contraction. So you get these big dilated spiral arteries and the hemorrhage can be massive. In fact, it's very interesting. There was a study last year by Mitchell Crinan, who's a notorious abortionist. He was going to prove that abortion pill reversal didn't work. So he was going to do this study that proved it. And they had a total of 10 patients, 5 who had taken Mifeprex, the first drug, but didn't take progesterone, okay? And 5 who took Mifeprex and then took progesterone. What they found was 40% of the women, 2 out of the 5, they had a 40% hemorrhage rate in the patients who didn't, but of those patients who did not take progesterone, I'm sorry, I didn't write this quite well. So overall, it was a 40% hemorrhage rate, but it was a hemorrhage in women who did not take the progesterone. So in the 4 women who took just Mifeprex and not progesterone, 4 of those women had massive hemorrhages, and 2 of those women had to be transfused. So it was they stopped the study for safety reasons, but it was safety for the patients who did not take progesterone, because that's what Mifeprex does. It causes hemorrhage. Now, one of the best studies overall was a study for women in Finland, and they looked at 42,000 women who had abortions. That's a lot of women. 20,000 of them had surgical, 20,000 of them had medical abortions. And they found that overall, medical abortions had 4 times the complication rate that surgical abortions had. So 1 out of 5 medical abortion patients had a serious complication versus 1 out of 20 surgical abortion patients with a serious complication. The risk of heavy bleeding was 1 in 6 for medical abortion patients, 1 in 50 for surgical abortion patients. The risk of leaving tissue inside was 1 in 15 for medical abortion patients, 1 in 60 for surgical abortion patients. And the risk of needing an emergency surgery was 1 in 15 for medical abortion patients and 1 in 60 for surgical abortion patients. Medical abortions are a lousy way to do an abortion. So the summary, if you put that paper in perspective, 20 out of every 100 women has a significant adverse event, including 15 out of every 100 women hemorrhaging, 7 out of every 100 women with tissue left inside, and 6 out of every 100 women needing emergency surgery. That's a lot of complication. And especially if you think about that in areas where medical facilities are not easily accessible, like this is being pushed in third world countries. It's just, it's abysmal. But, and that was only first trimester. We're not limiting, or I should say Planned Parenthood and the abortionists are not limiting the use of Mifeprex to the first trimester anymore. So this is a study looking at second trimester medical abortion. And what they found was that here's how far along the baby is in gestational weeks. Okay, so this is first trimester from here down. This is second trimester. This is the percent of women that need to have surgery afterward to complete the abortion. Okay, remember we talked about 10 to 15%? Look what happens when you get into the second trimester. You go up to 33% is 1 in 3 women who need to have surgery for hemorrhaging or tissue left inside when you get past 10 weeks, 10, 11, 12 weeks. So the short-term risks with medical abortion are hemorrhage, infection, surgical complications because of emergency surgeries to stop the hemorrhage, incomplete abortion, meaning there's tissues left inside, ongoing pregnancy with women now exposed to the second drug, misoprostol, which does cause birth defects, and death. Long-term risks with medical abortion are the same as those with surgical abortion. Preterm birth and subsequent pregnancies. There's 160 studies over 50 years which have shown this association. An increase in adverse psychological outcomes like suicide, depression, and drug abuse. And as Pastor Duncan mentioned, premenopausal breast cancer, especially for women who abort their first pregnancy and delay term pregnancy. That's a whole nother lecture, but it's a real phenomenon. Well, what does death look like for abortion? And this is surgical abortion data. The risk of death increases exponentially by 38% for every additional week of gestation. So the further along you go in pregnancy, the higher the risk of death. This is gestational age in weeks. This is first trimester. This is second trimester. This is third trimester here, okay? And I want you to look at something. This line is live birth mortality. That is the risk of death from giving live birth, okay, from taking a pregnancy to term. When you cross 20 weeks gestation, it is riskier to do a surgical abortion than it is to bring a pregnancy to term. All right, so we've talked about the availability of organizations pushing and the horrific risks of medical abortion. Now, let's talk about the potential for abuse of do-it-yourself abortion drugs by pimps, family, angry boyfriends, etc., and understand the laws surrounding forced abortion. I'm sure that anyone in California knows that abortion medication now has to be available at California College Health Centers. When they get these drugs at the health center, who's going to be there when she hemorrhages at night? And what's going to happen when she delivers that fetus in the toilet? Is she just going to flush it into the California septic system? I'm going to see if I can, can you bear with me a minute? I really want you to see this particular, okay, hold on just a second. Okay. I just want you to listen for a second and let me know if you can hear this, okay?
Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk to you about abortion pills. Abortion pills.
Needs to be louder.
I was able to buy these abortion pills from an online pharmacy recommended to me by a well-known pro-abortion group. They told me that it was safer than Tylenol. They told me it was an easy and safe way to end my pregnancy. They sold me these abortion pills without ever verifying my age, my gender, my identity, and without ever seeing a doctor or getting an ultrasound. I was able to buy these abortion pills using only a gift card. Right now, the abortion industry is lobbying the FDA to completely drop the restrictions on abortion pills. What that means is abortion pills like these could be sold over the counter or in the mail, like these. Let's stand together to make these dangerous and deadly drugs illegal, because pregnancy is not a disease and death is not the cure. Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk to you about abortion pills. Abortion pills like these. I was able to buy these abortion pills from an online pharmacy
Okay, bear with me just a second.
by a well-known pro-abortion group. They told me that it was safer than Tylenol. They told me it wasn't easy.
There, it stopped. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share screen again. Okay. All right. So something you have to understand, I thought that video did a really good job of explaining the problem, how easy it is to get it, and how sex traffickers and abusers could easily get these drugs. My organization has a joint committee opinion that I would really recommend you guys consider reading. It's long, but it's really informative. We put this together jointly with the American College of Pediatricians. And it's our opinion on pornography, sex trafficking, and abortion. So I'm just going to give you some snippets. In one of the best studies done on sex trafficking by Laura Lederer, she found that almost a third of sex trafficking survivors identified Planned Parenthood clinics as the most common clinical treatment source they had contact with. In fact, more than half of respondents reported having had abortions, and 1 out of 3 had multiple abortions. There have been survivors' accounts of victims undergoing forced abortions performed by the trafficker themselves, a client, or even by a female appointed to supervise other females under the control of the trafficker. Victims of sex trafficking are not empowered by abortion. They are deprived of their human dignity and rights. Pornography and sex trafficking represent a growing health crisis which exploits the vulnerable and promotes violence against women and children globally. Abortion enables the traffickers to continue this exploitation and entrapment. Abortion, pornography, and sex trafficking are an inseparable triad. What decreases one decreases the others. What can we do? Well, as medical professionals, we can educate ourselves and our staff about human trafficking. We can help to develop state and local curriculum, and maybe you guys can also help participate in that if there's an opportunity that arises. We can develop response protocols for whatever setting you're in. If you're in a school, just red flags and screening tools, how to screen for trafficking victims. We can use trauma-informed, victim-sensitive interventions and ensure that everyone's aware of the national hotline and or local police special victims 24-hour call line. We can participate in anti-human trafficking coalitions or task forces, advocate for mandatory reporting of abortions below the age of consent for your state, and immediate referral to Child Protective Services. Let me tell you why we said this. There were cases in Alabama where 13-year-olds were brought in for their second or third abortion, never reported to protective services. And when the abortion clinic, the Planned Parenthood clinic workers were interviewed, they said, well, we had no reason to suspect that the child was being hurt. I mean, it's like unbelievable cooperation with sex trafficking. You can advocate for laws that will deter demand, laws that hold traffickers and those who solicit commercial sex accountable. So hold the men accountable for their role in sexual exploitation and in sex trafficking of minors. You can participate in legislative efforts to regulate online pornography, especially efforts to limit access for minors, because that's how they recruit minors into trafficking. Okay, and greater oversight of abortion clinics. Advocate for full informed consent, including showing a client an ultrasound prior to abortion. And I'm going to skip through some of these pretty quickly, but any community efforts that you can do to strengthen services for victims of human trafficking will help. And encourage personal internet accountability and safety for you and your family and your staff and your clients. The second part of this second part is talking about laws surrounding forced abortion. I didn't know this until I heard a presentation from the Justice Foundation, that there are laws against forced abortion in every state. Many teenage girls are being forced to have an abortion by their parents or their boyfriends. Pregnancy resource centers are generally unequipped to help legally defend these clients. And so subsequently coerced abortions occur. And even under Roe versus Wade, the decision to keep the child is supposedly the woman's alone. So these young women's rights, legal rights, are being violated when they're coerced into abortion. The Justice Foundation has created a Dear Parent letter, which in friendly, helpful, and serious manner informs the teen mother's parents that they could be guilty of breaking the law if they force their daughter to have an abortion. This is a recommendation from Sarah Stone, who directs the San Antonio Pregnancy Care Center. The letter is extremely useful as a tool to support the mom's decision to keep her child and make the parents think twice about pushing for something that's truly illegal. This is one area that I thought maybe Lutherans for Life might be able to have an educational session in our churches. Because unfortunately, if you look in general at the rate of abortion in churched women, in women who go to church once a week versus the general population, it's not much different. And I think we've got plenty of topics that we could educate our parishioners about, including the fact that forcing their daughter to have an abortion is illegal. All right, so those are the big, heavy, deep cognitive stuff I wanted to talk to you about. And then I want to think about with you some challenges and opportunities that are being presented to us because of this push for do-it-yourself abortions. So here are some challenges. The woman herself is now the site of the abortion. Well, what does that mean? That means that laws regulating clinics and abortion providers are essentially nullified because there's no place to protest and there's no place to stand in front of. And there's nothing except the woman and her conscience to prevent her from having an abortion. Women will be harmed and without medical care for complications, but nobody right now is tracking that. And women are being told when they go to the emergency room for complications to lie and say they're having a miscarriage so that complications will be difficult to track. But it does present us with some unique opportunities. One of them is that there is some time to reach her between the time she puts the order in the email and the mail order comes in. So we have some time to talk to her during which she may change her mind. There was a huge study done by CareNet looking at the decision interval and, between when a woman gets a positive pregnancy test and when she decides for abortion. It turns out that she decides in the first 7 days after the positive pregnancy test. That means she'll be in church once. Who's she going to talk to? Who's she going to talk to when she comes in? Is there an on-ramp, is there an on-ramp for her to have somebody in the congregation, maybe our Lutherans for Life outreach people in the congregation? Maybe we could make our outreach people the people that girl's going to talk to in that first 7 days. You got one shot because she's going to make that decision. So I just use that as something that we can think about. The other opportunity is that she's not under the high pressure sales techniques that happen when she's in the abortion clinic itself. And she may change her mind before taking the misoprostol. So we have time on our side. She's got access, unlimited access right now because of the mail order availability, but we have time on our side. If we can talk to her between the positive pregnancy test and the time her mail order comes in. So what do we have to do? We have to educate ourselves and our congregations about what a medical abortion is and how it works. We need to saturate our area with information on abortion pill reversal, because again, she may take that first drug, she may change her mind. Then what's she gonna do? She needs to know that abortion pill reversal works and that it's available. We need to outreach to women who are abortion vulnerable actually before they become pregnant. We need to outreach to men. It takes two to make a child. You know, that's something I learned in medical school. You actually have to have a male and a female to make a child. Where is he? Where's the father? What is he doing? Why isn't he at her side? We really need, it's critically important that we have an outreach to men. And I think Lutherans for Life is uniquely qualified and positioned to make a serious outreach to men. Remember, the location of the abortion is now the woman herself. So we need to somehow reach the heart and mind of the abortion vulnerable women and men before pregnancy happens. And then if you need resources, there are professional organizations who still practice Hippocratic Medicine. American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, that's the organization I direct. The American College of Pediatricians, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. And then there's religiously based medical organizations, Christian Medical and Dental Association, the Catholic Medical Association, the Coptic Medical Association, and the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation. So with that, that's what I wanted to present. I wanted to kind of open it up for Q&A and thoughts on how we can reach those women with and men with the critical information they need before they become pregnant and within that first 7 days after she gets her positive pregnancy test. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison. If you'll take your sharing of the screen down, then we can open up to our chat session. Lauren has asked if you could repeat the name of the group that has the Dear Parent letter.
It's the Justice Foundation. Alan Parker. If you Google Alan Parker or the Justice Foundation, you'll get it.
Okay. The Justice Foundation, Alan Parker. What other questions do you all have?
I have a question about, there's no ultrasound. I thought that was the main thing when we do. In Iowa, we started the whole idea of the medical abortions online, the webcam.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they have to have the ultrasound first, and then somebody in another city sees the ultrasound over the computer and gives them the thing. And they made a big deal about having that ultrasound, so because of ectopic pregnancy. So how do they get around that?
Well, who's going to stop them? So the drug gets mailed in from China. Who are you going to prosecute?
Yeah.
That's the problem. The problem is we have no handle to prosecute. If it were going through a clinic, you could prosecute the physicians for not adhering to Iowa law. But right now, you know, who do you prosecute when the drug comes from Australia and it comes in via the mail?
And the people don't even know that they're endangering their life by not having the ultrasound. How does it work if there's an ectopic pregnancy?
Well, the symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy are bleeding and severe cramping. The symptoms of a mifeprex abortion are bleeding and severe cramping. So even now, I'm actually in the process of reviewing 5,000 adverse event reports from the Food and Drug Administration. These are women who've been harmed by mifeprex that the FDA knows about. And in many of them, the drug, the mifeprex was given without any ultrasound. And they were given anyway. And in several of them, the women died because they thought that the bleeding and cramping, they called the clinic with bleeding and cramping, and the clinic personnel says, well, you know, that's normal, just tough it out, take some Tylenol, you'll be fine. And the women bled to death internally. They hemorrhaged to death because the ectopic pregnancy ruptured. And that's the problem. That's why really, okay, there is no good abortion, all right, period. There's no good abortion and there's no safe abortion. But if you had a shred of medical integrity, you would at least make a diagnosis before you would give them a medicine, okay? So you make a diagnosis that she actually has a pregnancy inside the uterus, and that's not happening now. And with the push for do-it-yourself abortion, they don't care. They say, well, you know, if she has a lot of pain, she'll go to the emergency room. Well, what if she can't? What if she can't? And it's abysmal medical care. As you can tell, it really bothers me that this is going on both for the woman and for the unborn child. Thanks you for the question.
John Johnson, if you're on, would you care to ask your question?
This is Jenny. I'm his wife, and I'm a nurse. And this is such a great presentation. Our daughter is a doctor. She's a pro-life physician involved in it in Kansas. What's the two questions. What's the profit for Planned Parenthood using the drugs versus the procedure? And secondly, if they're giving these without, what if they've got a bleeding dyscrasia? What if they're prone to bleeding and they're giving them these pills? How can they, I mean, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. And I have reviewed one woman who was on Plavix. She was on a blood thinner when she was given the abortion drug. I think she ended up getting like 10 units of blood.
Yeah.
It's a problem, the lack of medical supervision. And the other huge problem, which your daughter will recognize and you'll recognize, is that they are not checking these women for RH negativity.
Oh my goodness.
And they're not getting ROGAM. They are not getting ROGAM.
Oh
and this is even against ACOG guidelines. So the significance of not getting ROGAM is that if you are a woman who's RH negative and the father of the baby is RH positive, that first pregnancy, you'll get some of the blood in your bloodstream. And if that baby is RH positive, you'll develop you'll be immunized against RH positive blood. And then in the next pregnancy, if the baby's RH positive, you will attack the baby. So you will basically be immunized against this baby. So currently, the abortionists are not checking for RH negativity. And certainly with self-managed abortion and online abortion, women are not going to know that they need to have ROGAM. They're not going to know it. It's a huge problem. By the way, tell your daughter to join Outlook if she's not already.
Thank you, Johnsons, for your question. Diane Schrader, you have a question.
Yes, I was wondering if you had heard of an organization called Abortion. They are coming into Illinois now, and I looked at their website a little bit. I'm also on the board for our local pregnancy center. So I was trying to see if there was opportunity there for us to reach some of those women who may be considering an abortion through that sort of organization, you know, getting the pills, because they do require an ultrasound, and they also require some counseling done by somebody. Now, I don't know who, they're not very specific. So I was wondering what you knew about them, about that organization, Abortion.
I don't know much about them, but boy, Diane, that is a brilliant idea. Now, could you position Pregnancy Center to be the one to do the ultrasound prior to abortion? Could you advertise that? Hey, are you considering medical abortion? Get an ultrasound first. Wow, that's actually a brilliant idea. That
Well, I think
a brilliant marketing strategy.
Because the pregnancy centers offer the ultrasound for free, and I'm assuming that she would have to pay for that ultrasound, which would be an incentive to go to a pregnancy center rather than to a Planned Parenthood facility or another abortion clinic.
Right. That's a brilliant idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Joseph, you had a question. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, always. You were earlier asked, before I get to my question, the cost of these procedures. My impression of an
yes,
abortion is $400 to $500, something on that order for a first trimester. And the second trimester can be up to $2,000.
Right. That is correct. And the charge for a first trimester medical abortion is the same. The numbers reported by states to the Center for Disease Control do not include abortions from the state of California and several other states that have very high abortion rates. So we know they're an underestimation. And they also don't match the numbers from Alan Guttmacher Institute. So we basically have a unknown denominator. That is, we don't know how many abortions are actually performed in this country. And we don't know how many women are actually hurt. We have a minimum number. So what you see as reported is a minimum number of abortions.
Thank you. Michelle, if you could kind of work on the chat list, since I no longer have that up there, and invite the next person to answer that question. You can see I'm in dark right now. So
yeah. So the next person, it's Ronnie GR. I don't have the full name.
Oh, Grad.
Ronnie Grad.
There you go. Ronnie Grad. There you go. Thank you.
So again, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I had like 3 quick questions for you. The first is, what is the ideal time frame to start the abortion pill reversal? We actually put the 800 number on our congregation's webpage, but that would be useful information. Second question is, do you have any comments on just routine birth control pills as abortifacients, and specifically which? And then the third is, could we get a copy of your PowerPoint file or whatever, if you have a review paper on this? That would be really helpful, because I would love to share with members of my life team. Thank you again so much.
Let me answer for Dr. Harrison the third question. She has provided me with a PowerPoint copy, and I will be sending that out via email to everybody who has come on tonight. Go ahead, Doctor, on the other 2.
Thank you.
Okay. On the other 2, let me direct you to a website, AAPLOG, as in A as in alpha, A as in alpha, P as in Papa, L as in Lima, O as in Oscar, G as in Golf, .org. And if you go to resources and you look under committee opinion, resources, committee opinions, committee opinion number 7, I believe, is the embryocidal potential of hormonal contraceptives. And that's a compilation of several systematic reviews that we've done over the last 20 years. I'll give you kind of the bottom line of that. The way the birth control pill works, if you go back to my slide, you know, where I had all the graphs and the nice little red triangles and such. The way the birth control pill works is it interferes with a signal from the brain to the ovary to tell the ovary to release an egg. So when you have progesterone, when you have the birth control pill present, that signal from the brain is decreased. And it 3 things could possibly happen. Either you get very little decrease and the egg's released and fertilized and happily implants and becomes a pregnancy. That happens about 1 to 2% of the time, and those are the pregnancies on the pill. About 1/3 of the time, the signal from the brain is decreased, but the egg's still released, and the egg can be fertilized. But because the signal from the brain is decreased, then the progesterone, which stabilizes the lining of the uterus, it isn't produced as well, and so the lining of the uterus isn't stabilized. So about 1/3 of the time, about 1/3 of cycles, and again, it depends on the pill, but about 1/3 of cycles, you get breakthrough ovulation. And those are the ones we're concerned about. Is it possible that you have fertilization and embryo loss? Now, can we say beyond a shadow of a doubt? Nope, can't say it. What you can say is this concerning. And what we need is we need some gazillionaire to be willing to fund the research to find a fertilization marker. Because right now we have no way to tell when, we can't even tell for sure when an egg's released other than by looking by ultrasound. But we can't tell when fertilization happens. What we can tell, the positive pregnancy test, is when the baby implants and produces HCG. But what if the baby's lost between fertilization and implantation? So we need some gazillionaire to care enough to fund that research so we get a fertilization marker so we can actually answer this question. But it is concerning. There's concern.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Oh, that's great. And then the other question that I had was the ideal timing for the reversal,
Ideal timing?
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
Okay.
As soon as possible. So I think right now they're using 72 hours as a cutoff. So if she's more than 72 hours after taking the Mifeprex, then that the success rate goes way down.
Okay.
So ideally, you'd take the progesterone as soon as she took the Mifeprex.
Okay. Thank you.
But Dr. Harrison, isn't it correct that there is evidence that the abortion reversal pill has been effective for up to 5 to 7 days afterwards? It's just not as efficient there.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell because some of it depends on how far along she is in the pregnancy, because Mifeprex becomes less and less effective the further along you are in the pregnancy. So yes, there may be effectiveness at that point. I don't think it's been proven, but there may definitely be cases where a woman has taken it further along and the baby survived. And there are some cases where the babies survive even without the women taking the progesterone, but certainly the chances of survival go way, way, way up from about 25% chance to about a 75% chance of survival when you take the Mifeprex within the first 72 hours when you take the progesterone within the first 72 hours after the Mifeprex.
So what was suggested, and this is going to be a follow-up to Ronnie's question here, what was suggested in other presentations is that your chapter, your life team have available who are the OBGYNs in your area who are familiar with the abortion pill reversal procedure, and that you have that information available immediately for those in need.
Perfect. And are you guys in connection with Heartbeat? Because Heartbeat runs the abortion pill reversal network. So it would be great if the life teams could somehow partner with Heartbeat to get that list. We don't maintain that list because that's kind of Heartbeat's thing.
Okay, that's a very good follow-up, and we'll talk about that as a follow-up later so that I can send that out to all the chapters and teams. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Michelle, would you get the next person?
Sure. So our next person is Trinity. Is that person still here?
Lori, are you still there?
Yeah. Hi,
Okay.
this is Lori. First of all, thank you, Dr. Harrison. Excellent presentation. My question was, do you know of any resources, like one-page information sheets that are available about the dangers of medical abortion that are written specifically targeted to youth, something that would be easy to understand and that you could possibly put out in like a life information area, or give to a pastor or to a youth worker that has that access to the youth in the church?
Yeah, a one-pager. Probably your best and quickest best would be to go to Students for Life, because they've done a lot trying to fight the California mandate for abortion pills on campus. And I'll bet you they have made the one-pagers. The information available on the AppLog website is more like 15 pages, 20. So it's not small. Hopefully easily digestible, but if you want a one-pager, would either be the Charlotte Lozier Institute or the Students for Life. But you know what? If you email me, I can contact both of them and see if I can get a hold of a one-pager for you.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And then Heartbeat as well. Do you think Heartbeat might have like an online link that would give information about local area OBGYNs that might be able to do the reversal?
Yes, I do. They maintain that whole network, so they could let you know who in their network. I mean, here I am speaking for Heartbeat. I can't speak for Heartbeat, but I know that they maintain that, and they want to increase the network, and they want referrals. So I'm sure that they would work with you on that.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. Something that you could easily like put on a church website or something that people could go to online discreetly would be great as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lori. Michelle, who's the next?
Next is Beth Spitzer.
All right, Beth. Beth can't be heard. Michelle, would you go ahead and read her question?
Okay, so she says, it is so frustrating that women are dying from these abortion drugs and the drugs continue to be allowed. There are other drugs that have been discontinued that result in fewer deaths, yet because these are abortion drugs, they are protected. So I guess maybe not necessarily a question, but I don't know if you have any comment on that, on the...
Oh, don't get me started. This has been such a grief. You may not know this, but the FDA is actually allowing a demedicalized abortion trial. The FDA has done, under Obama, relaxed the REMS to give the abortionists almost everything that they wanted, with very little scientific evidence of safety. They have done nothing to protect the REMS. And again, this was the Obama FDA. But you guys have to understand something really important, and it goes back to Joseph's comment. And that is the drug Mifeprex was, the development of the drug Mifeprex was funded by the National Institute of Child Health and Human Services. We have a compelling governmental interest, apparently, in decreasing population. And so we have a real deep state issue with the FDA. And that's a problem. That's a significant problem. Why the FDA has not pulled this drug, I don't know. It defies medical logic, so that means it must be a political problem.
That indeed is scary. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds like an additional topic to discuss where we are in the United States with population control, and whether or not that mystic idea of reducing our population is a fact that needs to be brought out, that we're already falling below that sustainable level of repopulating. Michelle, next question.
Yeah, so there's just a few comments. Lauren had a comment about maybe LFL creating one of the a one-page document that would talk about the dangers of the abortion pill, and I think that's a great idea. So Donna, when you have a link to send us, that would be wonderful. Okay. And then Barb also had a comment, mention, I don't know, Barb, if you want to share your comment.
Well, I think Joseph said it the best already, but I just wanted to remind everybody that, and Donna is she knows it's a heart issue, it's a moral issue, and the most important thing that I see in all of these discussions is that it's the love of money. It's always the love of money. We have to remember that. It's always the love of money that gets involved in these things. And so it's something that we have to band together as Christians who believe in the sanctity of life and work from as much prevention as possible, education as much as possible. And of course, that's what the Lutherans for Life has always been all about. And my one question I do have is this is a wonderful presentation. It's full of all kinds of great facts. How do we as individual Christians or individual one or two persons in a congregation, what are your recommendations for how to broach this topic with our congregations, and what venue do we use to get people aware of it? You know, newsletters, presentation after church sometime. What do you recommend? Is there a recommendation?
Well, you know, I think it's going to vary church to church, and the pastor would probably be the best one to go to first and say, hey, you know, this is on my heart. And I really, you know, I have these resources. I would lay them at the pastor's feet and say, you know, I've got 5 ideas for our congregation. I could do X, Y, and Z. I think putting the abortion pill reversal number on the congregational website is absolutely brilliant. But I think in addition to that, I think there needs to be some person in each congregation that the congregation knows that they can go to, whose ear is attuned, you know, who's not going to be a gossip and preferably a woman, because, you know, a girl's probably going to be intimidated to go to a guy. So some woman in the congregation that you can identify that kind of makes yourself known as, hey, if, you know, girls, I want to tell you, if you have a problem, I'm available to talk. And, you know, I can be a resource for you. I want to know. And and maybe it needs to be a deaconess or someone who has somehow they know that they're not going to spill the beans, so to speak. I don't know, but so getting stuff on the website and identifying a person in the congregation, but I think your pastor is going to have the best insight into what's best for his flock. So I definitely would go to him first and let him know what God's put on your heart to do.
Yeah, in response to that, Barb, and thank you also, Dr. Harrison, for your suggestions. I think the pastor is the first place to turn, but many of our congregations have parish nurses, which might be a significant source of input. And most of our congregations are going to have, like we have had here online, nurses and doctors and lawyers within the congregational setting. As Lutherans, we should all be for life, and we should all be gospel motivated to share that life and those messages. And so just having some meetings with those who are in this professional level might be another place to help form a coalition of people willing to put the word out in respect to this.
I just realized too, we have a very large, very active Stephen ministers in our congregation, and that's, people know that they are trained to help and to listen, and they're known to be discreet and non-gossiping and so forth. So that'd be another possibility.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Pastor Duncan, have we got any professional relationship with the Stephen ministry? Because that's a fabulous idea. I mean, does Lutherans for Life connect with the Stevens ministry at all? Participate in training or anything?
I am not aware of a specific connection to the Stephen ministry, but that is something that we could certainly foster even as we're developing relationships with Bethesda and some other organizations. So yeah, great opportunity there. Diane and Michael Albers have a comment. I see it on the new chats that I have up here. Diane or Mike, are you on a line that you'd like to talk?
Yes, that was actually me. Simply, we've supported Doctors Without Borders for several years now, and I'm wondering if you're suggesting we just cut the ties with them. They do an awful lot of good.
They do an awful lot of good. It's really painful. I mean, that's certainly something for discernment. But if you do decide to do it, I would really suggest that you write them a letter saying, we really respect the work that you've done, but we cannot support your continued, you know, especially in the face of the fact that you're talking about allowing women who are in situations of very little medical care to increase the risk of death. Right. I mean, this makes no sense for Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah, it would certainly let them know why.
I have deep respect for, well, I had deep respect for them too. I am super disappointed.
Okay, is there another group similar to them that is pro-life? I mean, our church has.
I know of Catholic Medical Association has doctors overseas. Christian Medical Dental Association has a huge number of doctors in Africa. So I guess I would probably go with Christian Medical Dental Association or Catholic Medical Association.
Somebody just flashed up Samaritan's Purse. Is that?
Oh, Samaritan Ministries. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good.
Is that a medical? Is that a medical group?
Samaritan Ministries, they do sponsor. Yeah, they sponsor medical. They do a lot of things. They do disaster relief, and they do have a medical component to it. So yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay,
Samaritan's Purse may not be the same as Samaritan Ministries, is what I'm thinking. Can you confirm that?
I think Samaritan Ministries is, man, I want to say Samaritan Ministries is the cost sharing insurance program. Samaritan's Purse. Did I say Samaritan Ministries? I'm sorry. Samaritan Purse is the one who does the medical missions.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah. Samaritan Purse does.
This is Joe Meisner. I had a comment.
Go ahead, Joe.
You mentioned the Doctors Without Borders. We had a great big event here for the Rohingya, the people that are no country really, and are being pushed out of Myanmar into Bangladesh. My point is I received a letter from Doctors Without Borders asking for a donation. So I had heard about their problems with being involved with abortion, and I think it related to the Rohingya who were getting pregnant partly by rape. But anyway, my suggestion is I write a letter to these groups and I specifically ask them, and then about 30 days later, I have a follow-up letter. Sometimes what I will do is even send them a check for like $10, and I'll put on the check, this check is not to be used for anything having to do with abortion. And I will send a letter saying the same thing and asking them to assure me that my $10 didn't get used in any way for abortion. So I sort of put them on notice. I try to follow up, and then I have further follow-up letters as well. But I don't think we should let any of these groups sort of go and let the abortionists take over these groups, which they are doing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Those are good comments. And certainly as we move forward, I think everybody can see that tonight's discussion has again opened our eyes, even as I sit in darkness, to the idea that there is a lot of additional information to learn, discuss, disseminate, share with your congregations. And every life chapter, every life team out on the front lines of our Lutherans for Life organization certainly has the opportunity to do more research. Go online to aaplog.org, Dr. Harrison's group, and begin the research. You're going to have information from the PowerPoint that she has shared with us, many of the websites that are available, different organizations that you can start doing that research. And this is what Lutherans for Life is all about: educating and disseminating and sharing that gospel-motivated voice for life, so that when those young women, when those young men, when people are hurting because of the devil's schemes and the culture of death, that we have an answer to provide for them and a hope for the future that is different than what they see lying ahead of them. I want to thank you all for attending this session. Sorry for the technical difficulties that I'm experiencing with no power. I was glad to be able to use my iPhone to set up a network connection again and be online with you. In 2 weeks, July 21st, we'll have the opportunity to speak with the executive director of a pregnancy help center in Indiana. Katie Willman is also the vice president of the Lutherans for Life of Indiana. So please start emailing me if you've not already participated in the doodle poll for your RSVP for that event. I want to thank Dr. Harrison for the excellent presentation that she's made and for the giving of the PowerPoint to us so that we can share that with you. I'll be sending that out this week. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to email me those questions and I can get those to Dr. Harrison. And she may also decide to send me the direct email if she wants to give me that so that I can send it out to you so that you can directly talk to her. Dr. Harrison, any final comments?
Pastor Duncan, I'm going to correct that one slide. There was the statistic that I had up there that I have to correct. So I'm going to send you a revised one. Yeah, I'll send you the email for Applog. So
Okay.
you can send it out.
That'll be wonderful. I won't be sending that out tonight anyway. So by this weekend, I'll get that out to everybody. So that'll be wonderful. Any final comments beyond that? Well, wonderful, everybody. Thank you very much for your participation tonight. I encourage you to share this information with as many of your folks on your life chapter and life teams as possible. And we'll continue to put these resources out there so that you can grow in your gospel-centered voice for life. The Lord be with you this night and have a good evening.